Looking back, I think 2016 was the worst year of my life. I had just barely managed to graduate high school. I experienced my first heartbreak when I broke up with my boyfriend, but worst of all, my grandma passed away. She was a very important person in my life and raised me more than my own very busy parents did. Grandma was warm and inviting, and the only person who ever really seemed to have time for me. On top of that, she was incredibly creative, and this translated to some very impressive arts and crafts projects we did together when I was younger. My grandma's greatest passion in life was cooking. And boy, was she good at it. She put every home-style restaurant to shame without question. She spoiled our family as much as she could with our Sunday night dinners and impromptu get-togethers. Towards the end of her life, however, she was increasingly more homebound and could only make a trip to see the family around the holidays. During those times, she would always make her most famous dish, sweet potato casserole. It was sweet, spiced, and tasted of the goodness of the earth. Everyone loved it so much that she often joked that she'd never sell the recipe. Unless for a small fortune, of course. So when I was helping clean out her things from her old house, I was ecstatic to find a little recipe box under her sink with all of her classics inside, including the one for the sweet potato casserole. I took it home with me, excited to try and recreate the dish. And part of me teared up imagining being able to keep her legacy going, eventually teaching the recipe to my own kids, and then to their kids, and so on. It was the first time in a while that I had felt any kind of hope towards my own future. Unfortunately, the bottom of the little box was water damaged, probably from being under the leaky sink for so long. From the dust-covered top of the box, I could tell Grandma most likely had all of them memorized. I was deeply upset when I flipped through and saw the sweet potato casserole recipe was damaged. Most of the card was still intact, but part of the last ingredient was smeared and illegible because of the water damage. The recipe was pretty standard. Sweet potatoes, brown sugar, marshmallows, etc. But the last ingredient had me confused. I squinted my eyes and could barely make out 2 tablespoons of hewn flesh. I chuckled nervously. Funny joke from the grave, Grandma, huh? But the more I thought about it, the more that didn't seem right. She was never one for dark jokes. In fact, I remember one time she smacked me upside the head for a similar tasteless joke I made when I was younger. And then Grandma went on some tangent about Jesus and it not being holy. She was a classic God-fearing woman. I thought hard. Maybe I was reading it wrong. I knew the whole word wasn't there, so there was no way the recipe could actually call for human flesh, right? My eyes floated over the easily legible word flesh. Strange word choice. I flipped over the card and saw there was a note for the last ingredient under an asterisk. The younger ones are more tender, and it's always more satisfying to harvest them yourself. I put the card in the box away. My stomach rolled uncomfortably, and I suppressed the urge to vomit. The wording seemed so deliberate. I thought back to how frail Grandma became in her own age. Surely there would be no way she could keep up with doing that. But then I thought about how infrequently she made the casserole towards the end and how the recipe only called for 2 tablespoons. It was possible one harvest could have lasted her quite a while. As soon as the thought surfaced in my mind, I pushed it back. I didn't want to consider the implications that every year she could have been feeding it to the whole family. Something we all ate with smiles and looked forward to. I stored the box of recipes far away and tried not to think about it all. But as the weeks went by, I couldn't get the thoughts out of my head and the taste of Grandma's dish. It was a lot easier than I thought it would be. He was alone, walking home from school on a short patch of road surrounded by woods that divided the suburbs. He was maybe 7 or 8, I'm not sure. Kid barely made a noise. When he finally realized what was happening, he was already gagged and in the trunk of my car. I'm glad I moved out of my parents' place after I graduated. The place wasn't much, but it was secluded. The boy didn't put up much of a fight, and my assumption earlier had proven true. After the 2 tablespoons were removed, I still had plenty left, and parts that couldn't be used were disposed of. The cleanup was a little tedious and took quite a while. After a quick trip to the store, I had everything I needed. I set to work on the recipe, and only a little while later, the sweet potato casserole was baking. The smell of holidays with Grandma filled my house, and I was reminded of better times. While it was cooking, I got a call from my dad. He said that while looking through Grandma's old books, he found some picture albums and recipe books. Tingling with curiosity, I asked him to drop the cookbooks off. With the unblemished cookbook in my hand, my timer dinged, letting me know that the casserole was ready. I got out a plate and served myself a large helping. While I dug in, I flipped through the cookbook. I was hit with a wave of shock when I saw that the sweet potato casserole was included. At the bottom of the page it said, 2 tablespoons hawthorn flesh. I remembered the hawthorn tree that grew near Grandma's house. Sometimes in October, there would be little red berries hanging from its branches. I sat there for a minute, letting the taste of human flesh and Thanksgiving's past sit on my tongue. I smiled. Somehow, the casserole was even better than Grandma's, and I couldn't wait to share it.